All right, everyone. Let's just get started. I'll do a little bit of the housekeeping before I pass it off to Bruce, and then we can get going. So, anyway, everyone, welcome to the Nova Scotia Sport Hall of Fame Hero Chats. We had over 200 schools from all over the province sign up, so we're extremely happy about that, and thanks for taking part. My name is Shane Mailman. I'm the Director of Programs and Operations at the Nova Scotia Sport Hall of Fame. Just a few little housekeeping things. Everyone's done a great job of keeping their mics off. Thank you very much. Feel free to leave your video on, and then at the end, if you want to unmute yourself and say goodbye to everyone, that's cool, including Augie. Up in the right-hand corner, just make sure you click on speaker view, just so when we get going, all you'll see is Bruce and Augie talking. And again, we'll record this, and so we'll share it with everybody that's participating, and then anyone that couldn't participate. So I guess without any further things from me, I'll pass it off to our Olympic broadcaster extraordinaire and CEO of the Nova Scotia Sport Hall of Fame, Bruce Rainnie, to get it started. And that's pretty well it. Thanks.
That's it. Beautiful. Thank you, Shane. Thank you, everybody, for signing on today. We have a wonderful guest today. A lot of reasons why he's a great guest. First of all, he's a member of our Nova Scotia Sport Hall of Fame. We're very proud of that. He was a wonderful basketball player. He's a proud Nova Scotian. As you know, this is African Heritage or Black History Month in Nova Scotia. He's a very successful African Nova Scotian. He's also a guy who believes in this word inclusion as much as anybody I know. And that's a big word. It's a very important word these days, and it's one I'm going to get him to talk about in just a second. So let me welcome Augy Jones. Augy, it's great to have you on this chat. Say hello to like 10,000 kids here this morning.
Yeah, good morning to everyone. And seeing the students out there just made me smile. I was on mute, and as the students were all coming on, I was a teacher for a long time, and I just love the energy of the students. And I want to also really honor the teachers that I think are superheroes in our community. So great to be here, Bruce.
Hey, we got a lot of questions, and I want to start with one, and then we'll get to the schools and the ones that came in from the kids. But I mentioned off the top the word inclusion, and of all the people I know, you maybe believe in that ideal as much as anyone I know. In 30 seconds or so, what does inclusion mean to you?
I think it's for the English students out there. I think it's the root word include. And so how many of us feel included when we're at school? And I think that school is supposed to be an inclusive space. So whether you are female, male, whether you are able-bodied, disabled-bodied, speaking French, speaking English as a second language, everyone deserves to be included. And we often had a society that excluded people from things. Certain people couldn't play sports. Certain people couldn't go to restaurants. Certain people couldn't vote. So I think right now in 2023, inclusive culture is to include people.
You know what? I know you're a great athlete and played a really high level of basketball. Sport does a pretty good job of inclusion, does it not?
Well, it has as of late in the last couple of decades, Bruce, but we can think about sport when, there was no Paralympics. We can think about sports when girls could only play ringette and they couldn't play hockey. We can think about sports when, people of African ancestry couldn't play basketball. They couldn't, so we couldn't go to golf courses. So, we are moving in that direction. And I do think that sports is a great equalizer. Some of my best friends, longtime friends, I met either playing on the same teams with them or even playing against them. So sports is that equalizer where I feel it's a great space for children to be able to be inclusive and play volleyball and soccer and hockey and all those things. And so I must say that the past of sports was maybe not as inclusive, but it's getting much better.
Yeah. Let's get to questions from the kids. This is from the 3 Frazee class at Grosvenor Wentworth Elementary. We're going to start with a fun one, okay? Right out of the gate. Why do people call you Augy?
That is a fun one. And I've been to Grosvenor Wentworth and appreciate the school. My full name is Augusto, so Agasou. And I remember when the primary school teacher was trying to say my name, she just couldn't get it right. So from my mom's recollection, she said that one day I just said to her, just call me Augy. And that kind of stuck. Again, my full name is August. So I'm also born in August. So people think that's where Augie comes from, but it's actually, my full name means Black Panther. And so people just call me Augie.
Do many people in your life call you Augusto, or is it just Augie to almost everybody?
It's Augie to almost everyone, except when I was in trouble with my mother. All I'd hear was Augusto. I was like, oh no. I knew I was in trouble if she called me that name.
Yeah, let's hope that didn't happen often. You mentioned your mom. We got a great question here, and this one comes from, let me see here, William Banks' class at Grosvenor Wentworth Elementary. What influence did your mom and dad, who were both very well-known advocates in the community, what influence did they have on you when you were growing up?
Another great question. I think the best thing, and for me to be where I'm at now, 54 years old and a principal of a community college, they started out from very young. They made me feel proud of myself. So I would say to all the kids who are listening, like, no matter what you bring to the table, feel proud of yourself, because I had this sense, my parents always told me that you're not better than anybody, but you're also not worse than anybody. And so I always went to school and I went into situations where I felt I could do anything, Bruce. I had that inner confidence, and that's the best thing that my parents gave to me, and especially in a situation where I was often only in a class, there's maybe 2 or 3 students who had black, dark skin, but it didn't matter to me because the way my parents brought me up was to always feel very, very confident in what I do and what I bring to the table.
Great answer, Augie. Listen, a question here from Candace Davis at Pine Ridge Middle School. You're a very good public speaker. You clearly, I think, enjoy it. How old were you when you realized that public speaking's okay, nothing to be afraid of, sort of thing?
I think I was a teenager. I ran for president of my student council at Oxford Junior High School, probably 1983. And you had to get up and give a speech. And I was never one to really be nervous, but I thought at that point that the more I prepared, the better I sounded. And so now I am a little bit smoother with it, but I still prepare. I prepared for today. So I think when I was a teenager, I started to realize actually how fun it is to public speak, to do speaking in front of people.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. Preparation is always the key for almost anything, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah. A lot of people, Augie, and there's so many schools here that wanted to know about your Canada Games basketball experience in '87. So I won't narrow down the schools, but just a general question. It's a long time ago now, but you guys did something that never had been done before. Why don't you tell the kids about your team in '87?
Yeah, I was my first year of university basketball. And at that time, we were the home province. So all of our university players, so we had players from Acadia, we had players from St. Mary's, we had players from obviously St. X. And we were able to practice more than some other teams because we were the home team. So we didn't have to fly in or anything like that. And what's funny is when we went to Cape Breton to play, we weren't the favorite to win. Because we were little old Nova Scotia, there's no way they're going to win. And we started to gain momentum, and we were beating teams by 30 points, 20 points. And we played Quebec in the finals. And I remember the premier was there at the time, and the gym was packed, and a lot of students and parents from Cape Breton, in fact. And the gym was rocking, and we end up winning the championship, which is the national gold medal Canada Games championship by 14 points. And we were the underdog, but to be the underdog and win in Nova Scotia, in Cape Breton, was I always remember that.
Listen, as we talk about this a bit more, Katie's going to pop up some, it's not necessarily video, but some career highlights that we have put together. There's your team from '87. You can see it on the screen now. And a couple questions, Augie. Where are you in that, by the way? Point out to the kids.
Well, I've got the Michael Jordan-like wristband on at the time. That was, so I'm to the front, to the really skinny kid to the right side with the band on my wrist, on the arm.
A lot of kids asking about a favorite teammate you might have had from this team or any other team. Anybody jump to mind?
Oh, well, yes. So on the other side of the row is Wade Smith. Wade used to be the principal at Citadel High School, and he and I were best friends our whole lives. We played Community Y together. We played Queen Elizabeth High School. We both went to St. FX, and Wade passed away from cancer probably about 4 or 5 years ago. But he and I have been best friends our whole lives. And so to win that championship with him was fantastic. And then Bev Greenlaw is there, and he coached us at the Community Y minor basketball. And he ended up being the Canada Games coach. And you see Mark Parker is also the assistant coach, and he's now the coach at Citadel High School right now.
And that's Wade Smith, just to the left of Bev Greenlaw. Augie, tell the kids a bit more about Wade Smith. It was a horrible loss when he passed away, because he, like yourself, was a principal and was making just wonderful strides in both the community and the school, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was, and he was a person. We were brought up in community, and really thought that we had to make sure that school was a place where that the parents were comfortable with, that the students felt like they belonged, and also that best thing about Wade was he was approachable. So as a principal, if you went into his office, you could be a student, you could be the janitor, you could be a teacher. He was open to hearing people, and I think that's what resonated the most. Is he really had a big heart. I get a little teary when I think about him, because we were that close. Like, I miss him every day.
Yeah. From Basin View Drive Community School, this continues along this theme. You might have touched on this, but you can go a bit deeper. One of the kids asking, do you have a favorite memory from that gold medal game? Is there one play or moment that stands out?
I think I do, and it's an interesting one. It's maybe a little bit of when I was a feisty player, but we played British Columbia in the semifinals, and they came with these pins from British Columbia, and they gave them out to the fans. They were really trying to get the fans on their side, because we were in Nova Scotia, and I think we beat them by 40. And that may be a little mean, but at the time we were from Nova Scotia. We're like, you're in our hometown trying to win over our crowd, so now we have to give you a hard loss. And so that's what I think at that point too, we knew how good we were, to be honest, is when we beat BC, because British Columbia, as all the students would know, is a really much bigger province than Nova Scotia. But once we beat them, then we kind of knew that we had a chance to win the gold.
You see on that bio page, academic All-Canadian at St. FX. So you were a great basketball player and a really good student. How important was it for you to combine those two?
It was very important, and I can tell the students a story about that. I used to live on Windsor Street, and in the back of I lived right beside Pilcher's Flowers, and in the back of our home, we had a little basketball court. I might have been in grade 6 or 7 at the time, and I was out shooting baskets, and my mom got my report card, and it wasn't a great report card. And so she calls me inside, and I go inside, and she says to me, "Oh, I'm not mad at you, but I just want to bring something to you, that if you work on your school as much as you work on basketball, you're going to get good grades." And that was mind-blowing for me. I was like, okay, was it that simple? So we had exams coming up the next week. I studied for exams, and I started getting good marks. And so I realized that, you don't have to be, I don't think there's a such thing as being an intelligent student. It's just being hardworking. So when a teacher's asking you to do assignments, get the assignments in, sit in class, pay attention, and all of a sudden you'll start to enjoy school more. You'll get higher marks. And so all the way up, I always thought that basketball and school and sports went together. I really did. And so I tried to put the same love and passion that I had for basketball into school. And that worked for me.
I'll give you a question from George P. Vanier Junior High. You were the captain of that team in '87. You've been the captain of a lot of basketball teams in your career. You're now the principal of a community college. What to you is the key aspect of leadership? What makes a good leader?
This may be a strange answer, but you have to be willing to be unpopular, right? So when you're a leader at your school, you're often going to say things and do things that are actually the right things to say, but people don't want to hear you say it. So as a captain, I would often say, we've got to work harder. We're not practicing the way that we need to practice. I was saying things to my teammates that oftentimes before we actually won the championship, they're like, who's he think he is? Well, as the captain, I had to say things that sometimes people didn't like. And right now, as a principal of a trade school, and I'm very proud to be a principal, we have things that happen with instructors. We have things that happen with students where I have to make decisions that are unpopular. But I think that's what leadership is. So for the students out there, for you to be a leader, you got to be willing to not always be the most popular person around. Sometimes you're going to say the right thing, and it's not going to be the most popular thing, but that still makes you a leader.
You can be universally respected, if not universally popular, right? There's a difference there.
There is. There
Yeah.
is.
Listen, a lot of kids want to know this one. We're going back to the fun side of things. LeBron James or Michael Jordan? Who is the GOAT?
Wow. Well, considering that Michael Jordan just broke Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's scoring record.
No, LeBron did.
Oh yeah, what were the two?
You said Michael Jordan just broke his record.
LeBron
Just broke.
LeBron did. Yes,
Yep.
LeBron did. So I'm gonna give LeBron that nod because I owe it to him in this time. But I was crazy about Michael Jordan. I even had QEH were white and blue and yellow colors, and I had the black and red Jordans, one of the originals, and they didn't match my uniform, but I was crazy for Michael Jordan because of the things that he could do. But at this point, I got to give the GOAT to LeBron.
Good answer. Who is the most famous basketball player you have ever met?
Wow. I remember in high school, Mike Tanner, who still coaches QEH football, took us to Boston. And we stayed around at the end, and I met Larry Bird. And it was funny because everyone loved the Lakers at the time. Magic Johnson, the Lakers. I was a Boston fan. I like Danny Ainge. I like Kevin McHale. I like Larry Bird, especially because he was smart. And I consider myself a smart player. So getting to meet Larry Bird was probably the most famous NBA player I've ever met.
Was it pleasant? Was he pretty good to you?
Yeah, he was. And we were a bunch of kids hanging around, and I think I might have got his autograph. But it's interesting that they meet so many people that you expect them to spend time with you alone. But, as he was walking, he spent some time. It wasn't a whole lot, but just to see him and him to stop and give us 30 seconds, a minute of his time was outstanding for me. And we were high school students. We weren't even basketball players. We were just general high school students that paid for this trip. So some people weren't impressed with Larry Bird, but I was very happy with him signing my piece of paper.
Yeah, for all the kids out there, type his name into YouTube and sit back and marvel, right? He was a tremendous player.
Yes.
Yeah. How about this one? Back to Grosvenor Wentworth Park for a second. This is interesting. A young person wants to know, teacher or principal, which do you enjoy the most?
Being a teacher. I look around the screen now and I see all the students, and the energy that you bring to the schools, the students, is fantastic. Like I really enjoyed, and I taught high school English, and I also taught high school English in the Caribbean. And every day, no matter what mood I was in, once the students flowed into the class, I felt good. I really did connect with students, and I loved teaching essay writing and poetry and drama, and we'd read novels. One of my favorite novels to read was The Hunger Games that we did in junior high. Everyone loved that book at the time. This is even before the movie. So I really would prefer being a teacher rather than a principal.
Still liking the principal role, though, right? We don't want to.
It's okay.
Bad, right? Yeah, it's okay. Yeah. A great question here from George P. Vanier as well. This one circles back to your biography a bit. Your father, and kids can look him up too, he was such a well-known person in the community. Did you ever feel like you were in his shadow growing up? And how did you get over that, if indeed you did?
No, I wouldn't. I didn't never look at it that way. I felt that there were ways that I learned, things that I learned from him that were very positive. So I was never in his shadow because I would see that as respecting him. Like he had an influence on me. So I never tried to run away from that influence. I knew that was a big part of my success. So being in his shadow was actually, I would say, kind of comforting. If you think about a shadow that protects you from hot sun, I'm going to flip that and say being in the shadow was actually a beautiful thing because it protected me. Because I would often say, well, you know, my dad's Augy Jones. And there was a protection that went with that. So I think that a lot of people say I remind them of him. I spoke 2 nights ago at the University of Alberta on a virtual call. And one of the first Black principals in Alberta remembered being at a University of Montreal lecture that my dad gave in the 60s. And she goes, my God, you remind me of your father. So, you know, being in his shadow is kind of a cool thing, to be honest.
Yeah. What did you like most about being a basketball coach? You went from player to many years as a coach. What did you like best about coaching?
Well, first I want to say I saw Melanie Miller on the call with her class, and I actually recruited Jessica Miller, her daughter, to play for me at St. X. And I always consider myself, Bruce, a teacher coach. And so because I love teaching, I always thought coaching was the same as teaching. The only thing you were teaching was, instead of teaching essays, I was teaching basketball. And so in that same realm, I love to see students or basketball players get better and improve and go into games and score more points than they did before. So seeing the growth of students and seeing the growth of basketball players is why I coach. And I coached a U14 team this year in Halifax, and we won the championship last weekend, and the team really grew and got better. And that's always a fun part as a coach.
Excellent question here from grade 4 Flecknell, Coldbrook School down in Coldbrook. Outside of your parents, who was your biggest influence when you were in school?
Wow. At the time, I'd say I was at the community YMCA, and it's not in the building it is now. And when I was a teenager, Bev Greenlaw, who you saw in that picture, who coached the Canada Games team, was very much an influence on me because I played the point guard position and he was a point guard. And I remember he used to drive me home after basketball games on the weekend, and we would sit in the car and talk about the game for like an hour afterwards, just dissecting what happened. So I think when I went to junior high and high school, he still had an influence on me around being a thinker. I loved being a thinker. And I'm going to add it to one of the questions. I see Natalie McDonald there says, what was your highest points I had in the game? And I have to link this to Bev. I still hold the record for most assists in a game, 17. And I was playing at St. X, and we were playing against Bev. Bev was coaching Dow. And in that game, I had 17 points and 17 assists. And that's still a national record for assists in a game. So, you know, Bev was a huge influence on me.
You want to talk about the importance of assists in basketball and in life?
Yeah, I didn't score a lot of points. Wade Smith scored way more points than I did, but I love to pass and even and get and make people help them score. And I think that's for me as a teacher and a principal. I have that assist mentality. I really like to be behind the scenes and set people up for success. And so I found in basketball, I always wanted to throw you that perfect pass that set you up, that all you had to do was take one step and put it in the basket. So that I really thought of myself as making other people better if I could give them the perfect pass.
Augie, there were a lot of questions from schools that kind of boiled down to this one. Why do you think Black History Month or African Heritage Month is important in this province?
Well, I think it's important because we need to know about other people. And I have a business on the side, Empathize Others, where I talk to a lot of companies around diversity. And one of the things I say is, and when I look at this call right now, all of us from Sport Nova Scotia are different. All the students are different. All the teachers are different. So in fact, knowing difference, I call that the superpower of 2023, being able to be able to understand different people. So February gives people who are not of African ancestry a chance to really go to events and see things on TV and hear talks like this, where you get to know a little more about the Black community. And I also pay attention during Indigenous History Month and Disabilities Month. Like whatever month there is, I think it's a chance for that certain element of the population to celebrate themselves. And at the same time, we get to learn. So Black History Month is a great time for for people, for the kids and teachers that are Black and of African ancestry, they get to celebrate themselves. But on the flip side, people get to learn about how we live and our history and the way that we think and the way that we are culturally. So I think it's a nice combination of celebrating and learning.
Yeah. Speaking of learning, this will be, I think, the final question. We're kind of running up against the 10:30 mark. I love to ask this question, Augie. For all of the kids watching and listening to you today, what's the biggest part of your story? You're a very successful African Nova Scotian who's now leading a community college. What's the biggest part of your story that they can learn from and that should resonate with them?
What comes to mind for me, Bruce, is self-love. Self-love. You have to love yourself. Like, no matter what size, shape, abilities, even if you don't have to be the best athlete. You don't have to. God makes everyone has a beautiful ability to do something, right? And so the more you love yourself, the less that even bullying works on you. Like, I really did, because even if I didn't fit in a certain crowd, I didn't care. I love myself. Okay, you're bullying me because I'm not looking like you, or I'm not wearing the right shirt or whatever. Okay, that's fine. Namaste, like, that's fine. So I think that the thing around self-love is every single student that's on this call should be able to love and respect themselves and say that when I come to school every day, I love myself. And that's how you can start to get better grades and make friends and find your way in what you're really good at. But it starts with loving yourself first.
Yeah. What about decision making, Augie? What was an important choice you made at some point along the road that led you to where you are today?
Well, I really focused, I think, on hard work. And so when I first started playing mini basketball, I played my first year, I was 6 years old, and I played for Community Y. I scored 1 basket the whole season. I had 2 points, and it was a beautiful 2 points. But then after that, I realized that if I kept working hard, I got better at basketball. I would say that's the same thing in school. That's the same thing in anything, is that if you work hard, you can achieve your goals. And there are people that you guys have had on this Hero Series that have been to the Olympics, that have been to World Championships, that have played in the pros. Those are all people that work hard. So I think that you don't have to just be an athlete to work hard. All the people that want to get good marks in school, it's just about working hard. It really is. How much work do you willing to put into it? And I would say that all the students online here that are good at Fortnite, you're good at it because you work hard at it. You put a lot of hours into Fortnite. That's why you're good at it. So if you put those same hours into your French lessons and those same hours into your math, you will also be just as good at it.
Spoken like a principal right there. Nicely done. I want to send it back to Shane. Augie, wonderful job. Thank you for the time this morning. Hope you enjoy African Heritage Month. And I think your messages were just great for these kids. So we really appreciate it. Thanks again, huh?
Thank you to Hall of Fame and to Bruce for the great interview. And I will say, Shane, if you want to send me those questions, there's Konchowski questions. I'm willing to answer those questions and get them back to the schools and the classes. If that's, just because I don't want to leave anyone out. So that's always open, that I'll answer all the questions that came up. Merci beaucoup, and have a great day.
We'll send it back to Shane. Thanks, Augie.
Perfect. So on behalf of the Nova Scotia Sport Hall of Fame and everyone on this call, thank you, Augie, so much for taking time out of your day. I know you're a busy guy, but I think the messaging that you delivered was fantastic. And I think the teachers and the students really appreciate it. Again, thanks to Bruce again. You do an unbelievable job. We're lucky to have you to do these. And thank you for the teachers for signing up your classes so the student get to take part in this. And last but not least, thanks for the students for listening in, and hopefully everyone enjoyed it. So feel free at this point in time, if you want to unmute your mics and say goodbye to Augie, feel free to do that. All right, and thanks for everyone.
Great to see you. Bye.
Thank you.
Ready?
Thank you.
Oh.
Thank you all.
Okay.
Bye, Shane. See ya.
Sometimes I think this is her favorite part. So
I know, that's why I can't leave. Okay, Shane, thank you very much.
all right, buddy. See ya.
Okay.
Bye.